All right, and we are live. I'd like to welcome everyone to episode 2 of Narrations and Lamentations with Mittierim and the boys. I'm Mittierim. With me tonight is only Skip because our other good old boy, Michael, is currently being held by Dark Elf slave masters, and we are at this time negotiating for his release, so he will not be joining us this week.
We're supposed to negotiate for him? Oh, I'm sorry. I missed that memo.
Oh. Well, with that being the case, it may be 2 weeks before we see him again. But no, in all seriousness, we're glad to be back. I appreciate everyone being so patient with us having to cancel last week, but my wife went into labor and gave birth to a beautiful 7-pound, 10-ounce little girl named Joanna. So things went very, very well, and I thank you all for all the well wishes and everything that's been sent. It's been terrific. Before we get too far into things, though, there is kind of a bit of bad news that I've heard about one of our good friends here in the YouTube community that I would like to touch on for a minute and make everyone aware of. We at Narrations and Lamentations are sending out our condolences to Lord Tremendous. We've received the news that his demon prince has defected to Slaanesh after the tail whooping he took from Demonic Orchard in the battle reports this week. So very sorry to hear that, Lord Tremendous. And if there's anything we can do in this time of need, we know you're hurting, just reach out. You know we're always there for you.
Chaos is fickle.
Absolutely. So just to kind of give an overview of what we're going to be dealing with right now. We originally, for last week, we were going to be focusing primarily on, primarily on rating the different armies and deciding sort of power levels within the narrative and our general thoughts on the various armies. Now, that is still a great topic, and we do want to get into that. However, I think both Skip and I feel that without Michael, that conversation will lose a little of its punch. Mm-hmm. But luckily, the universe has made up for us, and more than enough stuff has happened this week for us to talk about. So we're first going to kind of deal with Nagash and all of the craziness and rumors that are swirling around about that, as well as dealing with sort of what this might mean for Ninth, our takes on it, so on and so forth. So then we got a just overwhelming amount of viewer questions, a lot of them having to do with Negash. So we're going to deal with those, and if we still have some time left, we're going to deal with some of the army rating issues we were talking about. But we don't want to go too long because Long Island Wargaming is hosting a Warhammer Weekly at 10 o'clock. They were nice enough to delay their start time for an hour to not compete with us for viewers. So that is very much appreciated, guys. So I guess with no further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. So Negash, pretty much he goes on sale this Saturday, along with the campaign of the same name, which according to all rumors is supposed to be the first of 4 campaigns in what Games Workshop is entitling their End Times storylining. So since I have been running off at the mouth for almost a solid 5 minutes ago, up to this point, what I want Skip to do is to start off kind of telling what he knows about it and give his impressions on the products that are being released and what his thoughts are about it. So Skip?
All right, thank you. First of all, the model itself for Negash is awesome. I think what we were talking about it last night, it's pretty tall. It's bigger than they're bigger than anything I've seen that at least we play with on our table.
It's a beast. I mean, they've got that picture that shows the comparison to like a normal skeletal warrior, and I mean, my guess would be it's between 15 and 18 inches tall.
So a little bit bigger than a Mortis engine, I would think, or right around that size.
Probably something close. It looks bigger to me. And I mean, the Mortis engine is on a normal chariot base, and this thing is on the same freaking base as a Stonehorn. So
yeah,
it's a beast.
it's very sweet looking. I think it's going to be 1,000 points to actually put him in the army. So that's going to be interesting. That's the most points I've ever seen on a Lord. As far as the campaign is concerned, I was just kind of thinking about it before we even, talked a little bit about it before we went on the air. To me, my gut feeling is that Games Workshop is doing this kind of like what Marvel and DC do every now and then, where they just kind of come through, they do like an end of times or, wrapping up of what the current storylines that are going on and completely reboot everything. And I think that Games Workshop may be using that same formula in coming in with the End Times supplements. Since it's coming out in 4 different books, I think what they're going to do is not only bring this character into the world, but cause him to send the ripples of change throughout the entire Warhammer Fantasy continuum, as it were. I think that's what they're doing. Because just all the rumors, and I know we'll get more into this in a little bit, but it sounds like they are going to be releasing books specifically mentioning some of the armies that are already here and how they are reacting or how they're dealing with the end time scenario.
Yeah, I have to say I have that thought myself, and it's interesting that you already get into the cycle, because I think the other thing that I know Mr. Reef discussed in his video that I thought was very spot on is a discussion as to whom the target audience of Warhammer is and who GW is going after as far as where to make their money. Now, I know there is some disagreement as to who their target audience is. Let me go ahead and give my 2 cents on that. And I know there are certain people, Mr. Malorian specifically, who are going to disagree with me on this. It's time to face facts, guys. The competitive tournament player is not GW's audience. There is no situation in which that being their target audience makes sense. Simply put, there are too few hardcore competitive players. Because, yeah, there's a lot of tournaments, but in a lot of areas, the GTs are the same people who are traveling around doing these things. I mean, I would wager, let's say optimistically, there are 2,000 competitive players in the U.S. And I think that's a vastly inflated number. There is no way that a global company like GW can focus on a pool of only 2,000 players as their primary audience and make money. That's just not happening. So first thing everyone should do is realize that the competitive player is not GW's audience. They've said repeatedly the competitive player is not their audience. If it was, they would be running tournaments. They would be focusing on that player. In all honesty, we are more like their target audience. The people who get in, pick up the models because they're cool, because they want to play, they want to tell a story, and allow GW to squeeze us for as much money as we can while we're still interested in the game. So I think we have to all realize that. Because once you operate from that point of view and that understanding, that analogy makes a whole lot more sense, is the idea that if they are gearing up for 9th with a renewed vigor on these kind of players, then it makes perfect sense for them to wipe out as much as they can of stuff that they don't feel is going to gather attention of these players and simplify things. And that's where it's making a lot of people nervous, is that simplify things. So we'll deal with that a little bit later. Let's set that off to the side for right now. But as far as the product goes, as far as what's coming out, we'll go ahead and talk about that. The first thing I want to say, I think the model is gorgeous. It's a great looking sculpt. It's definitely a centerpiece style model for the kind of folks who want something big and impressive on their board. But am I going to pay $105 for it? Probably not. And I don't think the competitive folks are going to, because let's be honest, it's a special character, and none of the GTs really allow special characters, so he's not a name for competitive folks. But I think he's a beautiful model. I think it would be fun to maybe play the campaign. Now, as far as the campaign books and the other products go, number one, I'm going to say that I am just as pissed off as Mr. Reef and Martin on the fact that the Magic cards were out of print 7 days before the product actually released. That's flat out bullshit. And two, the campaign, I'm kind of annoyed at them making the fluff side of the campaign and the rules of it two separate books. I think that's pretty obviously just a cash inflation bit. They're trying to have a reason to ratchet up the amount they're going to charge for it. Now, that being said, they look like good books. I'd be very interested in seeing them. But I tell you, my biggest concern with the whole thing is, after playing Blood in the Badlands, after playing at least one game of the Sigmar's Blood and looking over that, I am more concerned that the people who write the campaigns for GW have never played their freaking game before. A lot of the scenarios in both of those books are terribly unbalanced, and really don't provide an interesting or fun game, because it essentially the mechanics of them shoehorn you into only one realistic scenario is going to happen here, which I think is bad for a campaign. So I'm a little nervous about that. Now, if they got some better people to write their scenarios and stuff, it could be exciting, but I'm concerned there. So, what I guess we'll put the question to you, Skip, and see what you think. GW's obviously in a little bit of trouble right now. Their CEO just resigned, and they need a big cash flow. Do you see this product and its release as being a success for them?
I don't think so. I think if the way you put it, they are just trying to. I think they're just trying to milk us, because in every other thing that I've seen and that I've purchased and we've dealt with has the mechanics of an army and the fluff of the army right there at your fingertips in the same book. There is absolutely no reason why it should be separated, other than the fact that they want to get extra money. You know, I can see it. It's a marketing thing. They can say, well, you know, if you just want to read about it and not actually play it, you can have this fluff. Well, why? Why would you want one without the other? It just doesn't make any sense to me, other than the fact if you look at it like it's going to be something that's going to try to build their business.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, keep in mind too that they are packaging the two together, but they're just packaging the two together at an $85 price tag. So I think that's the big problem to me, is I think the only reason that they're packaging it like that is because they can justify the $85 price tag. It's the same thing with Triumph and Treachery that they did by including a little deck of cards and a bag of cardboard counters. It's just another little thing that has very little in the way of cost, and gives them an excuse to ramp up that selling price.
But it's even more expensive to buy that than to buy the actual 8th edition book. You know, I would think if you're going to charge that much, just charge $100 for it and actually get the rules book with it, so you can have it all inclusive into one thing. That maybe I can understand. But when you make it more than the actual rules for the game, I don't know. It's I don't want to say desperation, but I think it wasn't well thought out. And the fact that you brought up that now to actually play this, you're going to want to have the Magic cards, and they're not available except for they're going to be on the secondhand market, and it's going to be jocked up, 3 or 4 times the price.
Mm-hmm. So, well, I know Mr. Reef was saying he was already seeing them show up on eBay in the UK for like $50, the equivalent of $50 a pop.
Yep, and I watched Anthony's Sustainable Center talk about it as well, and he mentioned that too. So do I want to? Do I think it's going to be neat? Yes. Do I think it's going to be something that I maybe want to read? Yes. Do I want to spend that much money on it? Unless I knew what's going to be next, is this actually leading into 9th edition? Is this leading into something else? We just don't know. That's where the confusion is, I think, on everybody's end that I've been reading about.
Right. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if whether this leads into 9th edition or not will be determined by its sales numbers. I mean, if they are testing out a few new things for 9th, like a more unbound system, a system of allies, 50% Lord requirements, etc., and it just crashes and burns and doesn't sell for crap for them, I think you'll see some scrambling, and then we'll get 9th edition kicked out even further while they're trying to sort of pull back and realize what they're doing. I think if this setting and these books that they're making for the end time sell well, it may be that they take that as an indication of where they need to go in the future with 9th. So I think how much of this we see in 9th is very much going to depend on how the sales numbers go.
I agree.
And so that I guess gets into... I guess we'll start getting into the nitty-gritties of what is known so far. In these campaign games, and I'm not going to do the Chicken Little thing and automatically ascribe all of this to 9th edition. Right now, for the terms of our conversation, this is purely end game or end times campaign games. So with that in mind, it is already said that the Tomb Kings and the vampires will be able to be used as a united army. It is said that they will allow 50% lords, meaning that Nagash could show up in a 2,000-point army. So, taking that, what we know so far... Oh, and the spell lore of Undeath can be taken by anyone, and pretty much is only summoning spells and healing spells for undead. So basically anybody's going to be able to have undead. Taking those 3 points, what are your thoughts on them, and where do you see sort of pluses and minuses for our kind of gaming, for the the casual gamer, the campaign gamer, that sort of thing?
I think by uniting the undead, that actually kind of makes sense to me. I think you could still have a flavor one way or the other, but as far as being a casual gamer, somebody who may not have all the funds to put into getting a major army, like if they like both the flavor from Tomb Kings and Vampire Counts, now that they can combine models, they can combine things like that, and it makes it a little bit cheaper for the average person getting into the game. As far as the lore for everybody else, I mean, speaking when I play Dark Elves, why would I want to use a mage to summon zombies? They're only going to be used as a speed bomb. That's really or a bunker. That's the only thing you're going to be able to use it for when there's other lores out there that you're going to want to concentrate more on than this. It just doesn't make any sense why you do that. For the Undead Army, it makes perfect sense. But for elves or anybody else, why would you want to take that more?
I can understand you there, although I gotta say, even my ogres would be hard-pressed to not want to be able to just, like, pull a Terrorgeist out of their ass and set them loose on the battlefield.
Good point.
I mean, I really think it's going to depend on what you get to be able to summon with these spells. I think you're right. If it's just let's summon zombies, that's going to be garbage.
Yeah.
But if it gives you, there are some pretty strong options in the Vamp Counts lists that if you can just pull those out of nowhere and have them not count for points, why the hell not?
Yeah, that's a good point. But again, you have like the beast lord that can the beastman who can actually bring on a giant or a Jabberslith or something out of their lore. In the lore of life, you can turn yourself into a creature that way. So I mean, you got it in other lores too that can do almost the exact same thing.
I think you mean lore of beasts.
Beast, excuse me.
Transformation of Kadan. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, beast. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I dig that. My biggest concern, I think, is for the fluff if they decide that combining books is going to get to be a good idea. Because one of the things I really like, and I think has helped our campaign play, is the kind of defined rivalries, even amongst the other good races. Or the forces of order. Let's use the proper term. But I mean, okay. So what are they gonna? Some of the rumors have been talking about breaking them up into the vampires get their one, or the undead get one book. The like good guys of the old world get one book, and stuff like that. And I don't like that. First of all, I think anything that restricts the ability of the players to tell a story and tell the story that they want is bad. And I will go ahead and pretty much say that categorically. And I think combining lists can lead to that because you're essentially pulling together different armies that you may not want to be together for that story. Now, again, this is conjecture, and it may not come anywhere close to this, but that is a concern that I'm having hearing this. As far as the summoning undead bit, I think it's going to be either a death or fire sort of thing. Either what you're allowed to summon from it is so awesome that everyone is going to want to take it, so it's going to be like death magic, where it's just sort of the instant response to anything. Or it's going to be so weak and hard to pull off that nobody uses it and it becomes like a lore of fire. Now, my gut is telling me, and as an ogre player, I always listen to my gut, that the ability to use the Lore of Undeath will probably only be within this campaign. So I don't think it will have any impact on competitive players whatsoever. Now I know for us, just sitting around the kitchen table playing, if it looked to be a decent lore, I don't have a problem letting everybody use it. I think it could be fun. But if it's one of those things where you can 6 dice and pull a Terrorgeist out of your ass, then I think there's issues and there's some balance problems that may crop up there. And 50% lords, we haven't really touched on that yet. So you want to start for that one? I've been rambling for a while.
Yeah, I mean 50% lords. I mean, again, if we go in to look at it as a casual player coming in and you don't have a lot of money to spend, you can go ahead and say, hey, I got 1,000 points now. I can get me a really nice general, and that'll save me some money for having to buy all this core and all this stuff that I'm not going to use. I can put all the money into my one big model that I really, really like and really want to put on the table and save myself a couple of bucks here and there.
Right. Now that being, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, by doing that, if you take away the core penalty, where you've got to have a certain amount of core, I don't know. I think fluff-wise, it's not really going to matter. But as far as cost-wise, I think it's more cost-effective.
It possibly could be, but let me play devil's advocate with you real quick before I kind of talk about what I'm saying. Let's say you are a brand new player to the game. You went in and they said, "Oh well, it's awesome. You can have up to 50% of your dudes in Lords, 25% heroes, and the rest everything over here." So you go, "All right, I've got $150 to spend. I'm going to get a couple of units and then max out my Lord and hero selection for 75% of my points and sit down and play."
Mm-hmm.
First time you start that game, you show up against somebody with death magic who one spell snipes your 50% Lord, one spell snipes your 25% heroes, and you're left with nothing and you get wiped off the board by end of turn 2. How do you retain a person who has that kind of experience as the kind of player that GW wants, or that is even good for the hobby?
That's actually a very good question. I mean, if you're going that way, you're going to have to modify some other things too. Exactly, because one purple sun changes everything, and we kind of saw that last night when we played. It just changes everything. And if you do put that many points in and then it's gone, yeah, you're pretty much done.
And that's the thing I'm somewhat concerned about, because a lot of what makes Warhammer Fantasy fun is the interaction of the different units. And I think if you go towards allowing that kind of maximization of characters, you end up getting a lot of death starring. And I mean, I don't see, like, I can understand how they're saying, okay, yeah, it's less money out of pocket for a new player to get started. I just don't see that shift will lead to the same gaming experience that the game currently has that would get that player hooked and have them continue playing.
I kind of think if you lower the price at first and you get them involved, the natural tendency, at least for me, is to okay, well, I like this. This has worked. This is not working for me, but now that I'm into the game, I've got some things going on here, and I understand my army a little bit better. Now I can start adding other pieces, and if you give them that chance to at least get in the door with 1,000 points for, or 50% for Lords. I don't know. I can see both sides of it. I really wish I know which way they were thinking, but I can actually see both sides of the argument.
Yeah, and you know what? That makes a worthwhile response to that. It's not really something that I had given thoughts. That would be my worry, is whether that hang-on can work, or whether getting just enough of that hook in is going to keep these folks rolling. And it may. I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, we're all at this point just kind of grasping at straws, so there's only so much that we're going to be able to say with any definition. So that kind of being the case with where we're sitting on Nagash right now, let me actually kind of widen the conversation a little bit. For the casual player, what do you think is the place of these pre-published campaigns, scenarios? What are your general thoughts about them and how they kind of would affect, say, our gaming group or somebody like us that's a small at-home basement gamer, not intending to do tournaments, that sort of thing?
I think, well, let's start with Blood in the Badlands, because that's really the first one that all of us in our group started playing, and that's my first really experience with Warhammer is coming in and doing this, because it was a couple of weeks after I got started we actually started the Blood in the Badlands campaign.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So I think if you're just learning the system and you're just learning about your army, I think starting a campaign is a good idea, because you do have some structure, you do have goals that you have to accomplish, and while you're learning and getting those goals, you're learning and building your army. So I think for the beginning player, at least on my end, I enjoyed most of what we did as far as the Blood and the Badlands until everything went to hell. But I think just as a new gamer myself, a new Warhammer person, I'm glad that happened because it did teach me a little bit more about how to use Bretonia, because that's the army I came in with. Because we had an opportunity to go up against different armies that everybody selected, you started seeing what other people are playing, and you learn from it. Now, as far as an experienced gamer or experienced Warhammer, unless you really like the fluff of it, I think creating your own is more exciting than maybe running a pre-published thing. Again, since we have a role-playing background, you go back to looking at the pre-generated modules for D&D. When you're first learning and first getting into the game, that's what you need to do because you have the structure there. You actually have goals and things like that. But as you become more of an experienced player, you want to do stuff that's kind of outside the box. And that's the way I kind of look at the publishing here in Games Workshop. I think it's great for beginners. I don't think it's really good for the experienced person.
That makes a certain deal. Well, that makes a certain amount of sense. But again, I think I'm going to play devil's advocate to your point of view here. I ultimately think that its value for the new player has a lot to do with the strength of the scenarios designed. I think, like, for instance, let's say that you and I had just decided to do what you were supposed to do with Sigmar's Blood and pick up Empire or Vamp counts and just go from there and build your army from that. Those scenarios are so freaking off-kilter. I mean, yeah, they could be fun, but there is nothing even approaching a balanced match until you get to the fourth scenario. And again, I think it just goes to building, I don't know, maybe just the wrong expectations. And so I think what you end up having happen at that point is somebody having to do a lot of unlearning before they can learn to do a campaign on their own. Because they kind of go with the expectation of, well, you know what, who cares if I get 75% more points than you because that's just the story we're telling. And I think that requiring those mechanics to be hinged on it can be limiting. And again, like I said earlier, anything limiting, I'm not up on. So, so that's just kind of a general line of thinking for campaigns in general. Now, one of the other things that came from Vince Venturella, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right, he mentions the theory that there's going to basically be 4 of these event books that will occur in this end times. Nagash, Chaos, Skaven, and then one for basically all the other forces. And they specifically say that these will build into the end times. And his simple question is, the end times for what? Sort of what do we expect these 4 books to do that would earn it that kind of moniker? Thoughts?
I think going back to what I kind of mentioned before, if we look at it, can we look at it as what DC does? Is come in, clear house, and start a new house. Is this going to be the avenue to what we're going to see as 9th edition, or is it going to be a new set of rules streamlining what we have right now and calling it 8.5? The way it sounds, when I first thought of end times, my first instinct was, are they closing out fantasy? Are they just going to wipe it out of existence? End times, that's what it means. But now, the more I thought about it, the more I was like, okay, well, yeah, we've seen comics do this all the time, where they kind of clear out their universes and start from scratch. That's my gut feeling on this. I think that's what they're going for.
Yeah. And one thing that I had heard, well, not heard because I don't want to make it sound like I have inside information. One thing that was mentioned in these discussions was, what if this is GW's gear up to essentially put a bookmark on their world before they sell off Fantasy to some other company, or God forbid, even sell off Games Workshop itself. And this, the end times, really more represents the end of GW having anything to do with this shit. I don't know. Part of me thinks that the end times could be a very loaded idea, and could mean a whole lot. However, being in sales myself, having understanding the power of words and the power of creating an event, I think it's just as likely that we're going to see status quo after this point. And that the end times is basically just them bumping up this particular product line as this major campaign thing, and then you go back to keep going. Now, whether they will retcon out, to use the comic term, retcon out all of the stuff that happens in this campaign or not, who knows? But again, my gut is telling me that we're getting too up in arms about this as a community already. Until we see whether they're going to put their money where their mouth is and turn this into anything or not, I don't know that we should all be running around like Chicken Little.
Was this, now, me still being young in the community, was there this much talk when Triumph and Treachery came out, or Blood in the Badlands, or anything like that? Has there been that much, oh, is this going to be the lead into 9th edition? Is this going to be a complete change? Was there any scuttlebutt on that?
I don't think so, but I think they were a little less, I don't want to use the word subtle, in their general discussions of like what those things would be. I think it was pretty, I mean, Blood in the Badlands was pretty much known to be what it was. Triumph and Treachery, I can't remember anybody ever thinking that was going to be anything but just kind of a one-off fun rule set for multiplayers. Whereas this, they're playing their cards very, very close to the chest, and they're being teases about it. And I think it's doing a great job, because by them being teases about it, everybody is wondering what it's going to be. It's probably going to turn into big sales. Well, I could see it doing one of two things. Either it'll turn into big sales, or nobody is going to buy it because they're hesitant. At least in the secondary, or in our kind of group, which, as we discussed at the beginning of this, nobody gives a shit about us, so I don't think GW Matt cares whether we hold back or buy it. I think they're going to have plenty of people shoveling it to the folks moving through their stores, that it's not going to be a big deal. Let's go ahead, because, I mean, we've done almost 40 minutes on Nagash, and there's some other stuff I want to talk about. So let's close it off. And I'll ask you, basically, the 3 products that are coming out right now. If they were available, would you buy them? The model, the campaign book, the magic cards?
I would say yes, if they were affordable and I could afford it. Yeah, why not?
As priced as it is now, on Saturday, are you going out? Would you go out to the store and buy these 3 products?
No, I wouldn't. Personally, I mean, I'm not an undead person. I mean, if I played more of Tomb Kings or Vamp Counts, I would be more excited about it. But I'm not. I was more hoping for a Bretonnian book than this. You know.
I understand. My decision would actually be split. I'm definitely not buying the $105 model, and I'm pretty much not. I mean, even if I didn't just have a baby, we didn't just have a baby last week, I probably wouldn't buy the campaign book. I am seriously considering buying the magic cards, because like I said, they're kind of a fun thing I think we could throw into our normal game, and if I can find them anywhere for anything close to their retail price, it could be a fun little additive. But in general, I kind of agree with you. They're a niche product, and they're way too damn expensive for being a niche product in a niche game. So, That is pretty much our discussion of Nagash, and I know some people were wondering if we would talk about 9th edition and whether that would impact. And frankly, I think it's too early to say, and I don't think we need to do another 40 minutes on the impact of that. That's what we've already done. So, what we are going to do is I first want to thank everybody because you guys have been amazing shooting questions at us all week. So we've got some questions. I'm going to start from a few sent to us by Lord Tremendous. He took his time out for his morning, his Demon Prince, to send us some questions, and we thank you for that. First question he asks us is kind of out of our league because we don't usually play people other than ourselves. But he asks, how do you, or how would you, deal with a jerk opponent if you ran into one during a local pickup game, at a GT or at a local tournament?
I know we kind of discussed this a little bit last night. We tend to get a little upset at the board of things, but it doesn't. We get upset, we go on with it, and life goes on. But as far as just meeting somebody in person and having that happen, I think I would just be myself, have fun at the game, and just let them. If they're going to go off on a tirade, let them go off on a tirade. I'm still going to roll my dice. I'm still going to move my models, and I'm going to have fun, and I just won't play that person again. That's the way I look at it.
Well, I would love to answer this question. However, after the last incident, my lawyer advised me against speaking about this in a public forum. So we're just going to have to go to the second question that he's asked us. All right, this is one that's more our speed because we probably play with what we're going to answer. What is the worst unit in all of Warhammer Fantasy out of any of the armies? This unit just, as he says it, strafe barf-soaked garbage, and why?
Wow. Let's see. Just the unit, not the army, just the unit, right?
Just a unit. Just pick one unit and tell us why it's terrible.
As much as I kind of love them, I think Harpies suck as a unit. I mean, yeah, they can fly, and they get 2 attacks. That's about it. I mean, I like the way they look, but they are just plain garbage.
Well, I think the argument against that, though, is that they're designed to die, and they do that very well. They're designed to get in, block crap up, die, and help you control the battlefield. I think they do that well. My choice, however, doesn't do any of those things, and it's Snotlings. And Skip is going to go, what the hell are Snotlings? Because he's never seen one played. They're basically tiny, crappy goblin swarms. They're pretty terrible. They suffer from the fact that their stats are god-awful, and they're a swarm in addition where there's really only one good swarm, and that's Nurglings. So they don't get that 5-up ward save that the Nurglings do. They're not scouts or they're skirmishers because they're swarms. But yeah, my vote is just Snotlings. Other than the pump wagon, there is really no reason for anyone to pick up Snotlings, even for fluff. Like, they're just terrible for fluff. You actually get about the same fluff out of the Noblars for the Ogre Kingdoms, and they're a better unit.
Yeah.
Basically, fluff-wise, the Snotlings are just little pet creatures of the orcs, and it's like, if you're going to be a little pet creature, at least go be a little pet creature of the ogres. They're pretty badass. So his next question is flip side of the coin. What unit is the best? And he means end-all, be-all, can't be stopped, can't imagine seeing a list without it, and why?
Hellebron, Witch Elves with the Cauldron of Blood with Occam's Mind Razor. I mean, I think if you can go that route, and then the person you're playing is actually going to allow that on their table, of which we do not. I think that's the end all be all. I think if you have that, you got it made.
See, interestingly enough, I'm going to pick a unit out of the Dark Elves too. I think the Doomfire Warlocks are, if not the perfect unit in the game, damn sure close to it. They're great fast cav. Their magic abilities are awesome. The 4-up ward save is freaking amazing, and it pretty much makes them immune to the kind, or mostly immune to the kind of miscasts that they get when you 6 dice their spells. So I think they're awesome, and used correctly, they can cause a lot of havoc. They may not kill everything on the board, but they're going to cause a gigantic headache for your opponent, and that's exactly what fast cav should do, and I think they do it better than any that I can think of right now. Final question for consideration. How should Woompy be killed in a future session of Tremendous's Tall Tales? I'm actually going to go first on this one because I've been thinking about this a long time. Not to say that I've been thinking about Whoopi's death for a long time, but I guess that's how that's coming out. I actually think that Whoopi will die a martyr. He will go before Tremendous and show him the pure superiority of the 2nd edition rules for Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, and no one will believe him because no one believes the true prophets, and someone will nail him to a tree. That's my opinion.
Wow. I'm going to go with that.
Okay. So we went all meta on that. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. So that's all the ones that Tremendous gave us. We answered a lot of the other ones via the Nagash conversation because Lord knows y'all were interested in us talking about Negash for some reason that I still don't understand. I'm still weirded out by the fact that people are at all interested in our opinions. That's the thing that's still throwing me. But the other really interesting question came to us from Marcus Leedstrom. And he said, if we could delete one army, either because of fluff or because of rules, what would that be?
Okay. Tomb Kings. I don't
For
think
fluff or rules?
both. Well, I mean, I kind of like the Egyptian feel to it. Don't get me wrong. I do like that. But I was considering putting together a Tomb Kings army, but the more I talked about it with everybody, the more I read about it. I mean, unless you build a specific build with Tomb Kings, you're not going to get anywhere with them, you know? Unless you go the full shooty, 140 arrows coming at your opponent, which is no fun. I just don't think that they're strong enough to be a competitive army, even in what we do. I don't know. That's my gut feeling on it.
Strangely enough, you picked one of the weaker armies. I'm actually going to pick one of the stronger ones. I would delete the Warriors of Chaos.
Hey.
What?
I said, hey. That's my army. No.
And here, my issue with the Warriors of Chaos is actually more being confounded at the logic of them. I think, frankly, Warriors should be sort of a subset of the Demons of Chaos. Should be an option like it used to be. Couple of things that annoy me about the Warriors of Chaos. They're supposed to be this sort of Norse Viking type group. Why do they have knights? Like big, heavy, armored knights, that just annoys me. That's just one unit that pisses me off. But fluff-wise, the thing that drives me crazy about them is that the Warriors of Chaos are mortal beings who have not yet, but they've dedicated themselves to the Chaos Gods, but because they can be elevated, obviously, they've not made that sort of final connection to them. Yet, they are a stronger army than the Demons of Chaos, who are, according to the demon book, each individual demon is but a facet of the actual 4 Chaos Gods. So what the current army books try to get me to believe, and I haven't been able to swallow this pill yet, is the people who are serving are stronger than their masters. And I can't buy that. I can't do it. But I think it would... You still need them in the story because of kind of their constant threat against the Empire that stops the Empire from getting too big. But I think you should just roll them up in the demons. Get rid of some of like the crappier choices out of the demons. Like get rid of bloodletters, replace them with walking warriors. That sort of thing. And a lot of the units are very similar because they kind of came from a same proto book 3 editions ago. But I think fluff-wise, that would jive better with me. Then you can just delete the Warriors of Chaos Demon Prince altogether and make them use the rules from the Demons of Chaos, and you get rid of one of the biggest mistakes in rules that GW made in 8th edition. So I think everybody's happy at that point. Except for the Warrior players, I guess. But who cares about them?
Hey. I can understand that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Go on, because we have a second, like a follow-up question for that. So. Oh
no, I was about to say you could make the same argument for Tomb Kings and Vampire Counts. Why do you need 2 separate undead armies? Why not combine them into one book, one unit, and you can use the fluff to differentiate them. Okay, they're coming from the desert lands, or they're coming from the mountains, or they're coming from the graveyard down the street. You could do that in one book, not have the 2 separate books. Because the Vampire Count book, I like. I think it's very strong. It's not a top tier army, but it's fun to play against. Whereas the Tomb Kings, they just seem a little boring. I don't know.
I can see that. I would like to have some of the stuff from Tomb Kings in the Vampire Counts army. Like I would love, particularly given that my fluff for my Vampire Counts is Fallen Bretonnians, I'd love to have access to like undead Bretonnian archers. That would be nice, but they just decided to give everything ranged to the Tomb Kings, and I think that may very well be one of the reasons why they're lackluster in the game. Because you gave all of the ranged options to one army in a game that's primarily close combat based.
Yeah.
Kind of not the best choice. But
exactly.
All right. So the second question, and we're getting close to the end of the hour, so we may do another couple of these and just put our countdown till next week. In the same vein, for either fluff or sort of rules reasons, if you could have an army join the game that is not here, what would it be? Whether whether you want to name a specific fluff army or just a type of army that you don't think is present in the games right now, what do you think it would be and why?
You want to take this one first, or you want me to?
I'll take this one first.
Okay.
I actually would love to see them port the fan-made Halfling book straight over to GM, send that shit to China, print it out, let's make some miniatures. I think that is one of the best fluffy armies I've ever seen. The whole thing goes together, it's tight, it doesn't feel like anything's being added to the army just to make it more powerful, just to give them a kill switch, anything like that. I think it stays true to what the halflings are, and I think they'd make some badass models. I mean, I want Swan Riders. I want Swan Riders bad. And I mean, I've seen Andy 2D6 has a fella, I think his name's Halfling Pete, who has a halfling army that he put together from scratch, and it looks amazing. Remington Steele has one that he just did a battle report against ogres that coincidentally I wrote the narrative for to start off, so that was kind of fun that he brought me in on that. But I watched the battle report, and the freaking halflings kicked ogre tail. So I mean, it's a relatively strong army. It's definitely a finesse army because you're dealing with like strength and toughness 2 across the board for the most part. But I would do that. I would play a halfling army in a heartbeat if there was a good model run for them. Because right now, just assembling them as you can from the old Dogs of War stuff is it's too expensive for me. I can't do it. But if anybody out there has a halfling army that would want to trade them, I could totally send over my dwarves and get halflings instead. So send me a message, because that would be awesome. So, sorry, I rambled. What would you say?
In the same vein, I mean, I love the halflings, but I think just adding Dogs of War back, just being able to say, you have an Empire army, but you want to hire some ogres, to beef up your infantry. I think bringing that type of thing back so you can go out and, even though you're specializing in one army and you like a unit from another army that you think, hey, this would work, I would like to have that availability back.
Yeah, and I'll agree with that. Dogs of War was actually going to be my second vote after the halflings, but I love them too much to turn them down. The cool thing I thought about the Dogs of War is it allows you to get fluff from the rest of the world without having to devote an entire army to it. I mean, you got to see the Chilean crossbowmen, you got to see the birdmen of Alcatraz or whatever it was, you got the Leonin pikemen, so you got like one or two units from just everywhere else in the world, and I thought that was awesome, because it can let you fluff out stuff that you don't necessarily have to devote an entire book to, because it's going to be corner case. And on top of that, I mean, you have if they start doing like plastic units and stuff like that, just the ability to mod stuff, the extra bits and stuff would just be amazing to me. Because, I mean, you got stuff that you just never did anywhere else. Like, I remember the pikemen were a great kit. I mean, I still have the old Golgfag and his ogres from that. I don't use them in my ogre army because they don't look anything alike, but if I were to do a halfling army, they would totally be my moot ogres. But but yeah, I definitely think the Dogs of War is definitely a second good one, if the halflings never did it. Unfortunately, I think it's another one of those things that won't happen. Sad to say.
Yeah.
I kind of would like to see Chaos Dwarves come back and get toned down a bit. I think, because I like their fluff, I think they have great tie-ins with the ogres. There's a lot of fluff options there. But I think them being made by Forge World, it's not a great balance book, and it's not really accessible to everybody. And I would like to see that change. I mean, I remember back in high school, that was the one army my little brother tried to play, is he picked up the old little paperback Chaos Dwarves book with the old like Russian Jew hats, I guess. I don't know what you want to call them. They all looked very strange, but they were a cool army, and it's like, I don't know. I guess, again, it's one of those things, when you take away an army, it lessens the ability to tell a story. And as I guess that would be the whole lesson for anyone watching, if they want my opinion on anything that lessens the player's ability to tell a story is Uncle Bad Touch and shouldn't happen.
Agreed.
So we're getting about to the end of our time here, so I'd like to wrap up with a little bit of, we kind of did spoilers for the narrative next time. Would you like to kind of talk about what we're planning on doing for the next couple of weeks on the channel?
Yeah, we're going to kind of take a break from, at least for our end on the narrative. We're going to actually concentrate on helping each other build good armies amongst ourselves. We're going to create like an army ourselves and then let one of the other people play it. And that way you can get a better perspective on what you're doing, and then you can understand the other army that you're playing against a little bit better. And I think that's a really good idea, and I'm really looking forward to seeing that.
So yeah, it definitely, I think it'll help. So what we're going to be doing, we did get, we had another WTF Warhammer night. What, 2 nights ago at this point?
Yes.
And what we actually did was we tried playing Unbound Warhammer. We did, admittedly, we still obeyed the Force org chart, basically, so we had to still have 25% of this, that, and the other. But we could take the units from any army that we possessed. So we did 2 games, though I have to say I'm probably only going to do 1 battle report from them. Because when I played Skip, because we played Blood and Glory, I broke his fortitude at the top of turn 2, and that was when the game ended. So I'm probably not going to put those 10 pictures into a battle report because it's really just not worth the effort.
No.
But the other one turned out to be a good game, so I'm hoping to have that battle report up in the next few days. And then what we're doing with this next set of battles is I'm making the best ogre list I can for kind of what our level. Michael's making the best dwarf list, and Skip, who wants to focus on his warriors right now, is going to make the best warriors list. Then we're basically going to hand them to the person to the left when we show up for game and randomize who's playing. And then we're going to play and provide each other feedback. And then the week after that, everyone is going to take the list they designed with the feedback from the group, tweak the lists, and play again, basically. And just kind of see what happens. I think it'll be interesting to get different points of view from each other on our armies and on how they work and what will, I mean, kind of give some advice that'll make us better. Because I know there has been a little concern at how one-sided a few of the games have gone lately. And I think the idea is rather than just have one person, and I have to raise the guilty hand here, stomp everyone. I think it will benefit us in the long run to work to building each other up and making better opponents. So definitely keep an eye out on the next few battle reports, and any tactical advice you guys have, feel free to provide it. We definitely love that. I know doing these battle reports and being involved in the YouTube has helped me become a better player. Now it's time to spread that to the other fellas in the club. So definitely help us out there, and it'll be much appreciated. So any last words you want to go with, Skip?
No, just I guess we should let Michael out next week. So
yeah, we probably should. In all seriousness, he just got called into work at last minute and canceled an hour or so before we were going to get ready. So, but all in all, thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned. Well, I guess not stay tuned. Switch over to Long Island Wargaming. Those guys are popping back on for a one-off of Warhammer Weekly. So you guys will get an opportunity to see their take on Nagash and everything, and go see that on their channel. They were great to kind of talk us up the last day or two, and I want to make sure whoever is watching is going over there as well. So thanks a lot, guys, and we will plan to do this again next week unless Warhammer Weekly wants to come back permanent style, and hell, maybe we'll still do something. But thanks again. If you have any comments, questions, feel free to put them in the comments, and we'll see you guys next time.
Adios.